It's a long story, but there's a lot for us in this account of the healing of the blind man. The writer of John says, "And he walked along, he saw a man blind from birth. His disciples asked him, 'Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?' Jesus answered, 'Neither this man nor his parents sinned. He was born blind, so that God's works might be revealed in him.'" You know how quick you and I are to look for fault, for sin, for responsibility in the brokenness of others. If we see anything that's broken, we want to know why. And we point our finger at the broken person. We always want someone to be at fault. By our behaviors, we proclaim that children are poor because of their sin. The poor choose to be poor. The unemployed are lazy. It's not because the economy is changing or their skills are no longer valued. And war and violence in our society is always the fault of someone. We have 5% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's total of people who are incarcerated. We love to put people in jail. We love to find fault. Lawsuits abound. We sue people at the slightest provocation. Somebody's at fault. It's somebody's sin. We must understand that we live the brokenness that is a part of a fallen world. Original sin, it lies in all of us. It rarely does us good to put our focus on finding sin in another. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar began to ask, "Is not this the man that used to sit and beg?" And some were saying, "It is he." Others were saying, "No, but it's somebody like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." But they kept asking him, "Well, then how were your eyes opened?" What opens our eyes, so that we can see our world as it is? When I was pastor of a church in the inner city in Detroit, one of my lay people, Kurt and myself, went to the annual church assembly in Kalamazoo. We used the campus facilities of Western Michigan. They were great dorms to stay in. They had an interesting arrangement. Every 2 rooms shared a bath. It was a big bath, and it worked well. And you knew that every year at Synod Assembly, you'd meet some new people. Whoever was in the other room, you couldn't ask for your neighbors. They were whoever was given to you. This particular year, and Kurt was also very Caucasian, Kurt and I checked into our room, and we heard some noise in the adjacent room, so we went over to introduce ourselves. The folks were from the upper part of the state, from a rural area, and they said, where are you from? And we said, well, we're about a half mile from Cobo Arena in Detroit. And they kind of jumped back and looked at us and said, well, we didn't know there were any white people in Detroit. To which our response was, well, we're pretty white. It's not the way you think it is. It is not how you see it. Open your eyes. And their next question was, do you have your guns with you? The way they saw the world, everyone in Detroit was black and everyone had a gun. And we said to them, it's not that way. Can you see us? We are white and we have no guns. You've heard me tell the story before of the bikers that showed up at the senior citizen luncheon when I was working at a little outreach ministry in Dayton, outside of Dubuque, Iowa. And I looked out the window and saw this jet black Harley with a jet black sidecar come tootling down the road and slow down and pull into our parking lot. And my immediate thought is, well, doesn't that beat all? In the middle of this really quiet, sedate senior citizen luncheon, I'm going to have Hell's Angels come in and do whatever. And I was holding my breath. I thought I knew what I saw until they parked the bike and took off their helmets. And I discovered that the president of the senior citizen group and his girlfriend were also avid motorcyclists. My eyes were open. We don't want to see or hear anything that lies outside the way we want and need our world to be. We will delude ourselves and lie to ourselves in order to keep the world the way we want it. They brought to the Pharisees the man who had formerly been blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also began to ask him how he had received his sight. He said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and then I washed, and now I see." And some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not observe the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner perform such signs?" And they were divided. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him? It was your eyes he opened." He said, "He is a prophet." The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and had received his sight until they called the parents of the man who had received his sight and asked them, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son and that he was born blind. But we do not know how it is that now he sees, nor do we know who opened his eyes." Now there are some interesting people in this passage, in this exchange. On the one hand, we've got the Pharisees. They've got their rules. They know how the world ought to look, how it ought to operate, what's right and what's wrong, what you can do and not do. And what bothers them more than anything else is not that this man can see and that his life is transformed and that clearly there is someone in their midst with great power. They're not worried about those things. They are miffed because he did it on the Sabbath. And everybody knows you don't do anything on the Sabbath. You know, if we were all in the hospital and we were seriously ill, wouldn't it be cool? Saturday night at midnight, all the staff, all the doctors, all the nurses, all the residents, all said, we'll see you on Monday. We don't work on the Sabbath, so we'll be back in 24 hours. That's kind of what the Pharisees are holding to. Laws are laws, rules are rules. You don't break them for anyone. They are more concerned with healing on the Sabbath than they are able to be appreciative of and see the power of the healer. But you know who really bothers me? And who's a real challenge in this passage? It's the parents. The parents of this man who has been blind from birth, who I'm sure was a great disappointment to them when he was born and they discovered that he could not see. And they realized that their child would never live the life that they anticipated for him, the life that other healthy children would live in their community. They knew that he would be a drag on them, that he would constantly need their help. The story says that he was a beggar. It was the only way he could get by. How many parents would like the idea that their child is a beggar, sitting in the town square, hoping that someone will be generous enough to feed them for that day? Their son is healed. All of that is taken away. He has been given life. His eyes are open. He can see, he can be, he can do. But the parents are so determined not to upset the apple cart, not to put in jeopardy their place in the synagogue, that they literally disown their son. They would rather have their pew than to have their child. So for the second time they called the man who had been blind, and they said to him, "Give glory to God, we know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "I do not know whether he is a sinner. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, now I see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples?" Then they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from." The man answered, "Here is an astonishing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but he does listen to one who worships him and obeys his will." And they drove him out. Jesus heard that they had driven him out, and when he found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered, "And who is he, sir? Tell me so that I may believe in him." Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." And he said, "Lord, I believe." The one person in this story whose world has been totally turned upside down, where he has gone from being a blind beggar to a man who can see the world. He is the one who has been healed. He is the one who has been disparaged by the community for his healing took place on the Sabbath and therefore was an offense. And his family has disowned him. And he is the only one in the story who is able to see Jesus. The gospel says, and he worshiped him. Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment so that those who do not see may see, and those who do see may become blind. Some of the Pharisees near him heard this and said to him, surely we are not blind, are we? Surely we are not blind, are we? How is our sight? As we draw ever nearer to the cross, what do we see? Amen.